Back in 1998 and 1999, I had a crafts column in a parenting magazine. And the only problem with print is that the craft I'm going to show you today, I was only allowed this much space because in print magazines you're limited by how much information you can give about a craft. So it's almost Valentine's Day, so I thought I would go into a little bit more detail as to how you could make these. This was an idea that I had for a puzzle pouch. You could write a message, cut it into different sections like a puzzle, and then have it inside a heart that's been laced up around, and then you could give it as a Valentine. And this is a good craft for different age groups because you can change certain things, you can change materials depending on your budget and depending on the dexterity of the children. I'm using a variety of papers in this case. In the initial one that I did back in 1999, I just used construction paper, which is wonderful. And I also used curling ribbon. I don't have any curling ribbon now, but I have a heck of a lot of fabric ribbon. So in that case, I just did that to make up these examples. But curling ribbon would be better for younger kids because of the ridges on it. Fabric ribbon can actually be a little bit slippery. So you probably want to go with curling ribbon, and it's also much more inexpensive. I used a variety of papers for these. I have scrapbooking paper. This is poster board. This is cardstock. This is a little piece of marbled paper that I had from a bookbinding project. These other papers I decorated or made myself. This is just a wax crayon drawn on little heart, and then I put very thin acrylic craft paint over it and splattered it with water. This I marbled my acrylic paints on liquid starch, which I'm going to be showing in a different tutorial. This is just acrylic paper that's had metallic craft paint thrown onto it, and you get it wet enough and you can blow on it and move it around with your hands and make it drip, and you get a kind of interesting paper. For the holes, it's just a standard hole punch. I'm going to be showing you two different methods of stitching it. The easiest one for younger kids is just a regular straight stitch around, and then you tie a knot at the top, which they may or may not need help with. And the other way, for older kids probably it might be easier, is a whip stitch, which goes in and around the edges. First you need to make your template, and it's a good idea to do that on the same size paper that you'll be using. So in this case we got a piece of construction paper, cardstock, or whatever else is using would be fine. And I know you've all probably seen this before, but you fold it in half and you draw half a heart. If the paper's thin enough, it's great to cut both pieces at the same time because then the edges match better. To do the straight stitch, you need an even number of holes so that you get the knot on the top like this. Otherwise, if you get an odd number of holes, you're going to have an end on one, a ribbon end on this side and a ribbon end on the other side. So when I cut these, or when I punch the holes for the straight stitch ones, I start with my two holes at the top, and just because it looks nicer, I put one down here, because otherwise if you don't have a hole down here, it kind of loops across there. And if you put too many pieces of the puzzle inside, then they might fall out the end. So at this point, that means I'm going to have an even number of holes on one side and an odd number of holes on the other side. If you want a perfect heart, you can go through and like measure. I tend not to be that worrisome, so I'm just going to eyeball it here. So I have to have an even number of holes. That is my goal. So I've got a little area here now that's a good time for me to count the holes. So I have 17 holes. So if I just put 2 there, that's going to give me 19. I'm going to fit 3 in there, and that'll give me 20 holes, which is an even number. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yes! I got my ribbon from a fabric store that was going out of business. And I have so much that it's great because I never worry. Again, curling ribbon would probably be easier. So I'm leaving a tail down here for the other end of the bow, for this side of the bow. It's going to be there. And you just go in and out. You can play around with these parts a little bit, straighten the ribbon if need be. And then at the end, so say this is a little too short, it's really easy, you just pull out a little bit on this end. I was actually doing that. And that way, you're keeping it relatively tight, but you can even out the ribbon so that you have an easier bow on this side. And you don't want to double knot it because, so at this point, you would slip in. I didn't make my puzzle pieces. All right. At this point, these aren't puzzle pieces yet, but you can slip notes in there, and you put the notes in before you tie the knot, and you just tie a single bow knot. Using the whip stitch one, when you punch the holes, it doesn't matter if you have odd or even number of holes, because it's going around, the way it's going around the edge. Oops. Here's a whip stitch. So there's always going to be one coming up the back, but that's okay. So you don't have to worry about being odd or even. I cut the end of the ribbon at an angle to kind of help me going in around the start stitches. It will fray. Got my tail there. Holding it down. So here you are at the end. I was getting nervous there. I was thinking I didn't have quite enough ribbon. If you're using, it's better to have a little bit longer ribbon. This was 5 feet. This is thicker, this is wider ribbon. I think it just going through the holes and the fact that maybe there are more holes, that probably all affects how much ribbon you'd need. If you're using the curling ribbon, then any extra pieces that you have, you can, tie them into a bundle or curl the ends or whatever to make it a little bit more decorative. In this case, this heart was made with some marbled paper that I made on rice paper. Rice paper is very thin. I'm going to make sure that this is big enough. That'll fit. So if you got a delicate paper, and I'm going to use this on a smaller, I've only got one piece of the white left, so, and I want to use white in this case because it's almost translucent, and so I want the white to stay white in this. So I want to use my last piece of white paper. So I'm going to use a smaller heart this time, the smaller heart template. I'm going to fold it in half. So this is the cardstock, and this cuts easily because it's sturdy, and it has gone through rollers when it was being made, so it's been flattened and compressed. So this is a great paper. This is rice paper, and it's very delicate. So I'm going to cut it out. When I cut it out, I'm going to cut this paper. I'm going to cut all 4 pieces at once. I'm going to fold it. I bet you're saying it would have been better if I'd flattened this before, but I'm going to put it inside. I'm making a little paper sandwich. Keep your fingers crossed. My camera actually died just as I was about to glue this together. So I cut out a couple of other hearts from some other rice paper designs I've made. So I was just showing how I'm just using this heart template so that I don't get glue onto the table. So when you join 2 papers like this, when you glue them, I would suggest using the whip stitch around them, just in case the paper does separate a little bit. The whip stitch will keep it in position. You can let it dry, or you can go ahead while it's still got the glue wet and use the hole punch. So that's all sticky now. And because it's still wet from the glue, there's a potential that that might get stuck in the. No, I guess not. Nope, it's doing fine. I was thinking that potentially the glue might stick inside the tool, but it seems fine. I mean, this is an office product that's been around forever, and it's just going through there. So because I'm going to do the whip stitch for these, then I don't have to worry about getting an even number. I'm going to just do this one too because I like it, and I started doing it before my camera died before.